The following episode will profile the life and death of Mike Ison, also known as Acha, a former Mexican Mafia member from San Francisco. Nobody represents the roller coaster ride taken by some of the OG Mexican Mafia members like Mike Ison. The prison staff, news media, and non-Mexican convicts referred to him as Hatchet Mike or Killer Mike. The fellas and raza simply referred to him as Acha, Spanish for hatchet. Acha was born on December 23, 1939, in the San Francisco Mission District, the offspring of a Mexican mother and a Filipino dad. In 1958, Acha was first committed to the California Youth Authority for attacking a San Francisco barber with a baseball bat. At the age of 20, he was one of the youngest men at San Quentin, with a reputation for violence on the streets of the Mission District and inside youth incarcerations. He would become very proficient with prison-made weapons during his tenure in state prison. Acha became friendly with Mexican Mafia members Güero Buff Flores, Richie Ruiz, Cuate Jimenez, and Cheyenne Cadena, among many of the young convicted felons who were establishing themselves in Quilmas, the nickname given to San Quentin by Mexican inmates. On December 19, 1961, 1 week after Cuate Jimenez from Eloy Mara committed the first murder at San Quentin, Acha stabbed inmate Thomas Devers 6 times inside the prison gym, where he collapsed in the weightlifting room. For many years, several parts of the gym had blind spots with no gun coverage, making it ideal for isolating those who were earmarked for execution. Although the fellas had no problem performing under the gun if necessary, if you could successfully complete the job at hand, give that warning look to any eyewitnesses in the area, discard the evidence, and get away, that was the ideal situation. Acha was apprehended 5 minutes after the homicide near the lower yard domino tables when Officer L.C. Scott observed a large quantity of blood on Acha's right pocket short sleeve jacket. He was given 29 days in isolation, referred to the district attorney, who filed 187 murder charges against him. The A you see in this photograph at the end of his A number was from Acha's subsequent conviction for voluntary manslaughter for the Devers hit. Although not a large man, Acha was about 5'5" and weighed 165 pounds soaking wet. He became skilled as a prison killer and also became notorious throughout the penal system for being the #1 chess player. Nobody could touch him. On November 15, 1963, while locked up in the San Quentin Adjustment Center, he teamed up with fellow members Richie Ruiz from Bakersfield and Lito Pedrosa from Primera Flats in the fatal stabbing attack of Antonio Chacon, also known as Tony from Lopez Maravilla. Tony made the mistake of disrespecting a maid carnal. He was caught on the 3rd floor stairwell landing as they headed to the AC exercise yard, a perfect blind spot, and shame on anyone who was not on his toes during these periods of movement. That pretty much goes for anywhere you navigate in a prison, but when you've mouthed off against guys of this caliber, you have to be ready to back it up or get off first. Tony from Lopez Mara was one of several Maravilla gang members who suffered at the hands of the MED during a brief period of time. It was sort of a love-hate relationship because in the MS history, no street gang has produced more members than the Maravilla gangs. On the other hand, only the Nuestra Familia prison gang has suffered more fatalities at the hands of the Mexican Mafia than Maravilla. Not saying this to praise anyone, guys, just stating the historical facts. Acha would wear out his stay at San Quentin and was transferred in the late 60s to Foley, another nickname in our Rolodex for Folsom Prison. It was at Folsom where a veteran of the state prison system became a close Mexican Mafia associate, an especially close friend of Acha. Joe Morgan from Maravilla had been doing time in the California Department of Corrections since a 1940s murder conviction and was later also convicted of bank robbery. Thanks to Acha, who raised his hand for Joe and became his padrino, his sponsor, Joe would become the first convict of Caucasian descent to join La M. This was in 1968 or early 1969. At the time, Acha was 30 years old, Joe was 40. To give you some perspective, when I was recruited about a year and a half later in 1970, I was the youngest active member, having just turned 21. Joe, on the other hand, would become the third oldest Mexican Mafia member in their history. Although there were several members with much more tenure than Joe in the M organization and who possessed more influence, Joe's age, his Mexican drug contacts, and his charismatic personality would make him what I consider to be the number one most influential member in La M's history. Perpetuating a constant pitch of fear amongst the convict population meant performing statement hits. It wasn't about impressing anyone or showing off. It was about attaining a level of depravity others would never forget. A message we sent letting convicts know this is how you can go out if you talk. This can happen to you if you have something I want, like drugs or other contraband or possessions, and you don't comply. I participated in incidents that will forever be outstanding. No statute of limitations, if you understand. I will not share those with you for obvious reasons. One that I will share took place at FOLSOM in 1971. I have touched on how we always look for blind spots, and there are many of them we took advantage of in most of the older prisons. Acha knew exactly when he was making his move on this particular Sunday. When the church choir began to sing Rock of Ages and the organ player blasted away, Acha produced a bone crusher, a term we use for a sturdy, well-sharpened steel knife, and proceeded to stab and carve his victim, then tossed his guts into the aisles. By the time the music ended, Acha's job was completed and the convict was gone. Acha once again eluded prosecution because inmate eyewitnesses were nearly impossible to produce in those days. The exploitation of prison blind spots, a house of worship in this case, was ideal cover for another prison hit. San Quentin and Folsom often enjoyed the opportunity of having outside entertainment groups perform for the convicts. Johnny Cash was a regular at both prisons. On one of those occasions at Folsom, Johnny and his group were doing their thing. One of the songs he sang was Greystone Chapel, the same chapel I just discussed. This concert was held at the Unit 2 Mess Hall and was at full capacity. A typical performance, especially at Folsom, included Johnny Cash singing Folsom Prison Blues, which always set the house a-rockin'. On this particular visit, Acha had been drinking Pruno, and this particular batch was everyone's favorite, White Lightning. White Lightning was a powerful concoction of a potato-based alcoholic drink that brought the Native American out of a guy. So when Mr. Cash launched into his Folsom Prison Blues rendition, Acha suddenly became annoyed and reached for a spoon left on the dining room table. Obviously drunk, Acha walked to the foot of the stage where Cash was performing and shouted at him, calling him a son of a bitch. Then he yelled, "You're not effing obligated to sing that song every effing year." Then he flung the spoon, which bounced off Johnny Cash's forehead. Always the consummate professional, he winced but did not miss a beat. To his credit, the confused singer continued his song and completed the performance. Even Acha had a beautiful mother who loved him dearly. I'm sure we all did. Those poor angels just didn't know that their beloved sons were up to no good, and we were not about to ever tell them. Nellie Ison was known to us as Mama Nellie, and she referred to all of Acha's fellow Mexican Mafia carnales as hijo, Spanish for son. Since Mama Nellie lived in San Francisco, she didn't have very far to go to visit Acha at San Quentin or Folsom. Like all mothers, her son could not hurt a fly, and her hijos could do no wrong either. In her eyes, we were all innocent. In 1972, I thought I was toast because I was transferred to Vacaville on what was rumored to be a program in which the state would conduct a lobotomy on me to extract a portion of the brain that controls violence. When they finally relented to public pressure and announced they would back off this program, I sent word to Folsom and San Quentin that the coast was clear for other carnales to request the Lister program. Acha was among the first to come from Folsom, and he and other M members joined us. The deal they gave us promised that anyone who successfully completed the 6-month, 4-phase psychiatric and group intensive therapy program would be transferred to a general population mainline somewhere in the Department of Corrections. 5 years and what seemed a lifetime later, Mama Nellie sent me this photo commemorating M member Calote Amador's daughter's baptism. This function was attended by several Mexican Mafia members who met in a separate room to discuss M business. In the midst of their discussion and without warning, Mama Nellie barged into the room and demanded that Richie from Bakersfield be killed for disrespecting one of her daughters, Acha's younger sister. According to Mama Nellie, Richie had given her a ride and they argued in the car. Richie then slapped her, stopped the car on the shoulder of the freeway, and ordered her to exit the car. She had to walk on the freeway for a few miles until she finally hailed a taxi. Calote gently escorted Mama Nellie out of the room. He promised to discuss her concerns with everyone else, then returned to the room full of smiling faces. I mean, come on, that's Acha's mother. No one had a negative word to say about Mama Nellie because she was simply defending her daughter. But everyone agreed, to a man, there's no way on earth they would ever entertain the idea of whacking a fellow member simply on the word or complaint of anyone's mom. It wasn't going to happen. Those of us alive who remember this still laugh at the scene of Mama Nellie barging into the war room. Some of you may not like this, but God bless her heart. She was almost as lost as we were. Acha was a hardcore hope-to-die tecato, a heroin lover, who possessed a huge ego. Like Topo Peters, he was a small man with a lion's heart, also known as the Napoleon complex. Acha demanded recognition from his Mexican Mafia peers as one of the main OGs. Although he certainly earned that lofty position, when you push your weight around with other alpha males, things happen. After his 1994 release from Pelican Bay, Acha became embroiled in M politics in his final years and made enemies. Like Topo, Acha was responsible for justifying the murders of fellow members. Some of these were carried out, whereas some, like his campaign against Richie Reese, were unsuccessful. Towards the end of the 20th century, Acha succeeded in antagonizing the fellas to the point of being placed on disregard status. Disregard status pretty much cuts you off from all M business until they catch up to you with a bullet. In Acha's case, no one made a move to kill him on the streets, possibly due to his past reputation as a performing member, or maybe because he was seen as a grumpy old man entering his 60s and not worth wasting a bullet on. When you sum everything up, no matter who you were and what you accomplished in the Mexican Mafia, no one is bigger than the organization. When Acha paroled to San Francisco from Folsom on December 14, 1979, after serving 18 years and building a solid reputation throughout the gang underworld, Mama Nellie and Acha's girlfriend picked him up at the gate. The uninvited welcoming party consisted of 5 unmarked cars and an airplane that shadowed their drive to San Francisco. The only agent Acha would recognize was a former San Quentin gang investigator known as Sergeant Hankins, who was now a member of the SSU, so Hankins never showed his face. There is a book titled Alpha Guard, published posthumously following the death of Sergeant Hankins, with a chapter on Acha. Chapter 22 is called Hatchet Man Mike Ison. It details the surveillance activity on Acha in 1979 and 1980. The task force had already rented the apartment across the street from the girlfriend's residence. On February 13, 1980, MM member Jerry Peña, also known as Wino from Jardín, escaped from the San Francisco County Jail, where he was being held on bank robbery charges. He was arrested at the home of Nellie Ison, Acha's mother. Acha's parole was violated for harboring an escapee, and Hankins failed to have Mama Nellie arrested for the same offense. On November 23, 1980, Wino was beaten and stabbed to death at the Lompoc Federal Penitentiary by fellow Mexican Mafia members Güero Tres Portillo and Victorio Murillo, purportedly for bringing heat on Acha and having him violated. On March 25, 2001, Acha was at a local San Francisco pub between Market and Mission called Grady's Bar and got into a drunken argument with another patron at about 9 p.m. Jim Ayers was an eyewitness who saw Acha hit the patron, who fell to the ground and said he had been stabbed. He then saw 3 to 4 people, some described them as biker types, running down the street carrying pool sticks and appeared to be coming from the Club Charleston. According to Ayers, they chased the small guy towards Mission. Acha's badly beaten body was found in the intersection of 6th and Mission. On March 26, Monday morning, Acha passed away at San Francisco General from brain trauma. The funny thing about Acha's death is that everyone lined up for years to take credit for his murder. Rather than embarrass the people who try to go there for possible glory or whatever motivates them, this much is clear. There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end that way leads to death. This is a biblical citation from the book of Proverbs. The things in life we consider honorable and worthy are like dirty rags to a holy God. What a waste of life for such a talented individual. What a waste of life for multitudes of gifted men and women sitting behind bars. Like I always say, there are thousands of talented people in our prisons. The news of Acha's death caused many to reflect upon his life. Sonny Barger was one of the big boys from the Hells Angels and was at Folsom during the same time span as many Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood prison gang members. Sonny and his biker crew were instrumental in setting up some of the outside entertainment groups who came into the prisons to perform. He also smuggled in much of the heroin we consumed at Folsom during the 70s. Sonny met Acha during this period of time. When interviewed by the San Francisco Examiner, he said, "Mike did what he had to do to survive in prison. I know there are a lot of people that ran the prison system and that didn't like him, but Mike was a really good friend to me. Anybody who met him would like him, unless, of course, you'd done something against him." What gets to me about Acha is his statement to an interviewer from the San Francisco Examiner. He said, "If there is a higher power, I won't be one of those who walks through the clouds. I do deal with God, but my whole life has been choices." He went on to further state he was raised a Catholic, hoped there was a God, but for people like my mom. He expected nothing for himself. After his 1979 release from prison, Acha cared for his ailing mother, who lived near Candlestick Park, until Mama Nellie passed away. Acha essentially acknowledged his evil, but does not forgive himself, nor does he believe God forgives him. That is precisely the beauty of God's unconditional forgiveness. Man's views have nothing to do with it. What we did has nothing to do with God's love and forgiveness. My only hope is that such an academically intelligent man came to receive his God, the God he said he hoped for, The God he said were for people like Mama Nellie before he passed away. At his funeral, there were 8 family members who attended, probably the people who should have been the most important in his life anyway. In the end, the Eme didn't care about him. His former carnales never even sent a sympathy card.